it just reminded me that you can't focus on the noise of the outside world. And unfortunately, a lot of people do. A lot of people focus on the noise, and a lot of people enter the dark space of the noise to benefit them. And when you are a person who lives your life.
If there's one thing fans of Love and Marriage Huntsville know by now, it's this. Whenever Melody, Shari, and Carlos King's names end up in the same conversation, people pay attention. And this latest moment, it may be one of the most talked about yet. Because what started as a few smiles, a little public praise, and a whole lot of speculation has now turned into something much bigger. Fans thought they saw the signs. Some believed the door was opening. Others were convinced a reunion was already in motion. But then Melody made one thing crystal clear, and the internet has not stopped reacting since. Melody Shari is refusing the smiles, refusing the pressure, and according to many fans, refusing any return to Love and Marriage Huntsville, no matter how much people may want it. And honestly, nobody expected it to play out quite like this.
There's going to be people who's going to poke you to get a reaction out of you. They're going to make up lies. They're going to just say things to get people to join them in their hatred for you. And you just have to pray for them. And as you pray for them, pray for God to fulfill them with something that they're missing. Because you have to be missing something. You have to have a hole in your heart to spend your time going against people who did nothing to you.
Because for a minute, it looked possible. It looked like maybe after all the interviews, all the public back and forth, all the years of tension surrounding the show, Melody and Carlos might finally be moving toward peace. That's why fans were caught off guard. Because while Carlos appeared warm, open, and even complimentary in recent conversations, Melody's response felt very different. Calm, respectful, but firm. And sometimes silence says more than an interview ever could. To understand why this moment feels so huge, you have to go back to the beginning, before the headlines, before the social media debates, before fans started asking if Melody would ever return. There was Love and Marriage Huntsville, the show that introduced millions of viewers to Melody, her marriage, her family, and eventually, her heartbreak. When the series first launched, Melody quickly became one of its standout stars. Viewers connected with her immediately. She was smart, driven, funny, stylish, and ambitious in a way that felt real. She wasn't trying to be a reality star. She was simply living her life on camera, building businesses, raising children, balancing marriage, trying to keep everything together. But what nobody expected was just how much of her personal pain would become public entertainment, and that's where everything changed. Her marriage to Martell Holt slowly unraveled in front of millions. What began as uncomfortable tension eventually exploded into one of the most painful and talked about breakups in reality television. Fans watched the betrayal unfold piece by piece. The cheating allegations, the arguments, the emotional breakdowns, the conversations about trust, the endless cycle of trying to repair something that had already been deeply damaged. And through all of it, Melody stayed in the spotlight, even when she looked exhausted, even when she looked heartbroken, even when it was clear she was carrying more than anyone could see. People praised her strength, but strength can be heavy, and sometimes people forget that. They celebrate how well someone survives without realizing how much surviving is costing them. That was Melody. Week after week, she gave viewers access to some of the hardest moments of her life. And yes, the show grew, ratings grew, the conversations grew, the attention exploded, but so did the pressure. Because suddenly, Melody wasn't just living her life anymore, she was carrying a storyline. And once reality television locks onto a storyline, it can be hard to escape. even after divorce, even after distance, even after healing. That's what made Melody's eventual step away from the show feel so important. It wasn't just about leaving a cast, it felt like reclaiming herself. She shifted her focus toward music, toward speaking engagements, toward entrepreneurship, toward motherhood, toward peace. And while she never completely disappeared from public conversation, she made it clear she was no longer interested in being trapped inside the same cycle. But here's the twist. The audience never stopped asking if she would return. Every season, every reunion, every cast fallout, the same question came back stronger than before. That's why recent interactions involving Carlos King caught so much attention. Carlos remains one of the most recognizable names tied to the franchise world, and anytime he speaks publicly about the show, or even about reality television in general, fans listen closely. Some fans recently noticed what felt like a softer tone from him regarding Melody. There were smiles, kind words, respectful mentions, no obvious tension, no messy shade, no direct conflict. And for some viewers, that was enough to spark rumors. Suddenly, social media lit up. People started asking if conversations were happening behind the scenes. Was Carlos trying to rebuild bridges? Was Melody being invited back? Had enough time passed? Could a comeback actually happen? And for a moment, people really believed maybe yes. But Melody's energy told a different story. She didn't attack anyone, she didn't rant, she didn't create a headline. Instead, she did something much more powerful. She stayed exactly where she's been, focused, measured, unmoved. That's what fans picked up on immediately, because while people around her were smiling, discussing possibilities, and entertaining the conversation, Melody never gave the response people were waiting for. No big announcement, no teasing a return, no hint of stepping back into full-time filming. Nothing. And that silence became the loudest answer of all. Fans were split instantly. Some were disappointed. They miss her on the show. They feel the energy changed after she stepped back. Many believe the series has never felt quite the same without her. They say Melody brought honesty, she brought presence, she brought conflict when necessary, but also vulnerability. For many viewers, she was the heartbeat of the series, so hearing no signs of a comeback felt frustrating. Some begged her to return. Some argued she should come back just long enough to close unfinished chapters. Others wanted to see how she would interact with the Scotts now that everything, or how she would navigate scenes with Martell after everything. But other fans felt the exact opposite. They said Melody owes nobody a return. Nobody. Not producers, not castmates, not viewers, not the internet. They argued she already gave enough. Enough tears, enough access, enough pain, enough explanations. And why should she reopen wounds she fought so hard to heal from? That's where the conversation became emotional, because this isn't just about a television comeback, it's about boundaries. And boundaries are hard for audiences to accept when they feel connected to someone's story. People say they support healing, but sometimes they still want front-row seats to the pain, and Melody seems to understand that better than anyone. What nobody expected was how symbolic this moment would feel. Carlos smiling publicly, fans reading between the lines, and Melody quietly standing firm. It felt bigger than just a casting rumor. It felt like a woman choosing herself in real time, choosing peace over publicity, choosing distance over drama, choosing control over chaos. And if that's what happened, it explains why so many people are talking about it. Because Melody returning would absolutely make headlines. It would trend instantly. The interviews alone would go viral. The reunion clips would be everywhere. Every interaction would be dissected online. Every look, every comment, every conversation, especially with Martell, especially with former friends, especially with longtime critics. And Melody knows that.
She knows one appearance could reopen years of old conversations. And maybe that's exactly what she no longer wants, because leaving the show didn't erase the scars overnight. Healing doesn't work like that. You don't walk away from years of public betrayal and suddenly forget everything. You don't rebuild overnight. You rebuild slowly, quietly, piece by piece. That's what Melody appears to have done. She built outside the cameras, outside the chaos, outside the narrative others created around her. And that takes strength most people never see, especially while still co-parenting, still raising children, still managing businesses, still being judged online, still hearing your name tied to the past. That emotional weight doesn't disappear just because the cameras stop rolling. And maybe that's why her refusal feels powerful, because it doesn't feel bitter, it doesn't feel angry. It feels intentional, and intentional choices can upset people, especially when they expected access. That's why reactions online have been so intense. Some are calling her smart, some are calling her healed, some say she's protecting her peace. Others still hope she changes her mind, but nearly everyone agrees on one thing: Melody made people stop and pay attention again, without even needing to say much. That says everything, because the truth is, Melody Shari doesn't need a comeback to stay relevant. That's what makes this whole situation so fascinating. She's still talked about, still followed, still discussed, still trending, without filming weekly scenes, without reunion specials, without needing to return. That doesn't happen often in reality television. Usually, when someone leaves, the conversation fades. But with Melody, it didn't. If anything, the conversation got louder. And maybe that's why this moment hit differently, because fans weren't just reacting to whether she'll return, they were reacting to what her refusal represents: freedom, closure, growth, or maybe simply moving on. And moving on can look like saying no, even when everyone expects yes. What nobody expected was how emotional that realization would feel for longtime viewers. Because Melody's story has never just been about television. People saw themselves in her. Women rebuilding after betrayal, parents trying to protect peace for their children, people leaving painful environments and choosing themselves, people walking away from things that once defined them. That's bigger than reality TV. That's real life. And maybe that's why this latest moment feels so emotional, because whether she ever returns or not, Melody seems to be standing in a different place now, a place where she doesn't need approval, doesn't need the edit, doesn't need the cameras, and definitely doesn't need anyone else controlling the story. That may be what fans are really reacting to, not just the refusal, but the confidence behind it. Because sometimes refusing something isn't rejection. Sometimes it's healing, sometimes it's peace, and sometimes it's the clearest way to say, I'm not going backward. So, will Melody ever return to love and marriage in Huntsville? Right now, nobody truly knows. Maybe someday, maybe never. But what feels clear in this moment is that if it ever happens, it will be on her terms. Not because fans demanded it, not because producers hinted at it, not because smiles were exchanged publicly. Only if she wants it. And that changes everything. Until then, the questions will keep coming, the rumors will keep spinning, and fans will keep watching every move. But Melody seems comfortable with that now. She doesn't appear to be chasing the conversation. The conversation keeps chasing her. And maybe that's the final twist in all of this. For years, people thought the show made Melody, but now it feels like Melody outgrew the show. And if that's true, then refusing the comeback may not be the end of her story at all. It may actually be the beginning of her next chapter.